What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Faithful Phanatics Show live here on Dsm Media's Philadelphia YouTube and Twitter channels. Guys, first and foremost, I know I say this every single show, but do us a favor here as we kick off this Friday edition. If you are watching on Twitter, if you're going to watch and replay version on Twitter, we obviously greatly appreciate you. Just do us a favor. If you want to be interactive throughout the show, if you want to support us, if you want to make it easier for yourself to find our content, make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel. The link is in the link tree in our bio. It's very easy to find. It's very easy to sub to, and it's the best spot, like I said, to get your comments pulled up on the screen, ask your questions, chime in with the conversation with myself and my co-host Scotty this morning. A fun Friday show in the dog days of summer, man. We're going to get into our top 10 most important Eagles in 2024. Some news broke yesterday that the South Jersey area, Camden, New Jersey, is trying to lure our 76ers out of the great city of Philadelphia and over across to Delaware. We're going to get into our thoughts there. And the Phillies and the MLB is officially back today for the second half of their season coming out of the All-Star break. We're going to get into second half predictions. The Phillies obviously lead the MLB with 62 wins in the first half. What kind of pace can they keep up in the second half? Player predictions, that and much more, man. But happy Friday, brother. And let's get into it.
Yes, sir. Happy Friday to you as well, man. I think we're going to have some fun with these topics today. But yeah, you mentioned a lot of the news going on. Even in the dog days of summer, we still get controversy, I guess you could say, drama. So that's what comes with that Sixers news and potentially moving to South Jersey nonetheless. But it's interesting, man. I was kind of upset about it at first when I heard it. I've been going back and forth. I mean, how much does it really matter to me? But we could talk about that, obviously, when the time comes here on the show. But I'm excited to get into these top 10 Eagles, man. I'm excited to talk about the Eagles. Obviously, I think we're getting closer. We're getting closer to August, which takes us about a month out from the actual regular season of the NFL. So as we get closer, the excitement's going to continue to build because love me some birds, man. Yeah. But the Phillies will be coming back soon, too. So that'll be able to garner my attention back more towards baseball for a little while. They're the sole team in Philly playing, at this moment, even Scotty, with the Sixers out of free agency and all.
Do you know who I envy sometimes? Just sometimes, because I love being an all-around sports fan. Not just my teams, but multiple leagues, college, pro, everything. But sometimes I really do envy people that just love one sport, one team specifically. They can talk about the others, but they don't really care all that much. If the Sixers are on, they're going to watch their favorite TV show. They'll check the score, whatever. I say that to say this. I can't wait for football season. I was going to tweet this out last night, and not just the Eagles, but everything about it. The Saturdays of college football, the pregame shows on Sunday morning, locking in for hours on hours of just watching NFL football again. But then I go, well, wait a second. I want the Phillies to win a World Series almost as badly as I want anything right now. So I got to lock in for that. Oh, wait a second. Wait a second. This was the most exciting 76ers offseason I've ever witnessed in my 26 years of breathing. So I can't wait to watch them get on the court in October, November. And it's like I just envy the people that can just focus on one specific thing and be happy about that one thing sometimes, man.
No, I think it's a great point, man, because obviously the Birds, I think for most Philly fans, they stay at the top of the list as far as priorities or
they're king.
What you get super excited for. But I will say, the NFL in general, I guess this is the best way to say it. The NFL is the best product when it comes to professional sports, when it comes to garnering my attention.
Right.
On an NFL Sunday, it doesn't just have to be the Eagles. No. We mentioned it on the Wednesday show, man. The Texans are a team that I'm going to enjoy looking out for on Sundays just to see what they're looking like. There's going to be a bunch of teams like that I genuinely want to watch and see how they're playing. As long as not that I'm going to root for them, just interested in how it's going to look. Because I do think the talent is so widespread in the NFL as well. I think you have a lot of good teams in the NFL. The only other sport that I would say that I'll watch teams outside of the Philadelphia base is probably the NBA, but the NBA is more player based, team based, right? So I'm looking for certain
Yeah, it's
performances
just
from
the
players
tradition of
rather than
football.
teams.
It's just the tradition of football overall. Like what
Yeah,
a Sunday
the
is, what it
Sunday,
represents. Like you said, like,
even the
all right,
Thursday
yeah, there's
night
gonna be
now.
right. There's gonna be Wednesday night, ESPN, 2 games from the NBA. That might be really, really attention grabbing, right? Maybe it's
Yeah,
LeBron and the Lakers and Jokic in Denver at 10 p.m. out on the West Coast, and you're tuning in for that, even though the Sixers aren't on. But obviously, more games played throughout the week, 82, blah, blah,
yeah,
blah. Everything's spread out. You catch one game a night, whatever the case may be. It's the tradition of waking up. You know what I'm talking about? In the fall. I'm not talking about early
yeah.
September. I'm getting a couple weeks in. It's fall. Your windows are open a little bit. It's 10 a.m. Maybe you grab a drink at 10 a.m. I don't know. I'm not going to peer pressure anyone. You turn on the pregame show, whatever you do. We have turf talk. It's the
You set
tradition of just
your
sitting on your ass for
yeah,
12 hours, as
and
lazy as that
don't
sounds.
forget to set your fantasy lineups, because
Yep,
that's the other
place your
side of
bet,
it too, is you got
place your bets,
fantasy
set your
football,
fantasy lineups. Yep.
which is awesome, man. Yeah, I'm more than excited for it. Obviously, you guys can probably tell by the way we're leading the show here, but
Yeah.
it's coming. It's coming nonetheless, man, and I'm excited for it. But
Yeah.
where do you
So
want to start today, my man?
let's get into what we're talking about, man. Let's talk some football because the Eagles head to training camp in just a few days. What's today? The 19th? We are 4 days away from them reporting to camp, 5
Yeah,
days away, I believe, from their first official practice. And let's talk about what we're looking for in training camp, but leading into the regular season, man. This is a little bit of a look ahead to our top 10 most important Eagles players. I think me and Scotty did not share a list. We like it to be a little bit of a surprise. I
I did
think
do players, just
okay.
players. Yeah,
Because I was very close to like, where do I put Kellen Moore in this rotation? I'm like, let me keep this to players
Sirianni, like,
only.
stay out of the way.
Right. Exactly. So less is more sometimes, Nick. But now this is players only. And I'm going to be really honest with you, man. I don't have a concrete 1 through 10 ranking. Like, I can't sit here and tell you why player number 3 on this list is 4 spots more important than player number 7. Right.
That's fair.
I
Yeah,
can't do that. So I'm kind of
doesn't
going to
matter.
run through my
Yeah.
list, and then we can kind of talk about who's more at the top end versus the bottom end specifically and everything like that, man. But I'll let you go first. Give me your first half of the list. Give me your top 5 or 5 of your 10.
Yeah, I got you. So, obviously, number one, I went with Jalen Hurts. He's the quarterback. He's the leader. I think the big thing for him, just cut the turnovers, bring it back to dual threat, staying patient in the pocket, all the things that we always talk about with Jalen Hurts as far as what could be detractors for him, right? And I think the other side of that is just taking the easy route with Goddard, Saquon, right? Those dump offs should be built into Kellen Moore's offense, so should make things easier on him. Number 2, I went with Jalen Carter. Just looking at the defensive line, I look around, no Fletcher Cox, no Hassan Reddick. Who is the guy that can be like top 10 at his position and cause havoc on that defensive line to make our defensive line dominant? And Jalen Carter is that guy for me. Number 3, I went with Saquon Barkley. The first thing for him, just staying healthy, but feeds into exactly what I was talking about with Jalen Hurts. He's going to be part of that security blanket, that easy out. But the pass blocking too, like the first 3 down back that we've had in quite a while, that's going to be on the field full time. Number 4, I went with CGJ. I think he's got to be the leader of the defense. I think he's the noisiest, obviously. He likes to run his mouth, but that's a good thing. That's something our defense needs.
Correct.
They need toughness. They need physicality. They need playmaking. And that is something they were lacking last year, right? When he was here in 2022, when we went to the Super Bowl, had his career high in interceptions. I believe he had 6 that season.
And he missed like half the year.
Yeah, so he can obviously be the playmaker that this defense is missing. And then finally at number 5, I did go with Lane Johnson on the offensive line because I don't know. You could say the entire offensive line. And I think that's your point, like with not ranking these guys, because is Lane Johnson singularly more important than, say, Jordan Mailata or Landon Dickerson or Cam Jurgens, blah, blah, blah. But I do look at Lane as the elder in the room, the veteran, the all-pro, the perennial all-pro on the offensive line. And I do look for him to take a little bit more of that leadership role that we're going to be missing without Jason Kelce. It's not all on him, but he is the guy that you look at and you're like, yeah, this is the cornerstone of our offensive line. If Lane Johnson isn't performing at an all-pro level, then that's going to ask more of guys like Cam Jurgens, whoever's filling that other guard role. So I think, you could say Lane Johnson, Landon Dickerson, like all of these guys in reality, but I'm going with Lane Johnson there.
So, I mean, I'm not surprised because we still have 5 more to get through. So it's not surprising that we share at least 50%. Again, I didn't really put an order on this, so I'm just going to tell you right off the bat, I have those 5 on my list as well. So I'll give my points to why those 5 guys are inside my top 10 most important as well. I'll start with your last one, Lane Johnson. You asked, are they interchangeable? They're all very, very important. We know this. You lose Jason Kelsey. We understand this. But to answer your question, yes. Is Lane Johnson the most important of the group? Yes. It's let's just look historically at life with Lane Johnson on the football field versus life without Lane Johnson on the football field. They win games with him. They lose games without him. They severely struggle without him. I know he's gone through some injuries. I know he's getting a little older at this point. For my money, until you knock the champ out, he's still the best right tackle in the National Football League. And if you are the best at your position, you are damn sure going to be the most important at your position. So Lane Johnson being that all-pro, Pro Bowl right tackle for Jalen Hurts is going to continue to be incredibly huge this year. And I like your point about the leadership, right? Because we don't know the ins and outs of the locker room and all the personalities, but we know what Lane struggles with at times, and we just don't know how outspoken Lane is in terms of leadership, getting on guys. Maybe he's one of the loudest motherfuckers we've ever met.
Right. We don't know. But from the outside, it does seem like he is kind of the optimistic or positivity guy. You know what I mean? Like, he's dealt with depression and stuff, so he has to stay that way. So that is a question that,
for him.
Is he going to be able to dig into one of the young guys if they fuck up on a play, on a protection? So
but if you
maybe that's not the type of leader he is. Though,
but he sounds like Stone Cold Steve Austin when he speaks. So he's got that. He's got that raspy, deep. Like, I'm going to dig into you.
To be clear.
So Lane Johnson, I completely agree with you. He's on this list, and he probably, if I had to give an order, would be 5. I'll start with my concrete number 1 as well. Jalen Hurts is number 1 on this list for all the reasons you laid out there. For me, man, we know how talented this team is on paper. We know the additions offensively. When you have 2 of the best, when you might have the best receiving duo in football, you bring in a top 3 running back in Saquon Barkley. But this team goes as Jalen Hurts going to go. And what I mean by that is I asked you the other day, does he have to be top 5 for this team to win? No. I think Jalen Hurts can be a slightly above average quarterback in the National Football League with this roster and these weapons, and they will win a lot of football games. Can potentially
be a game manager.
Correct.
Yeah.
But we've seen the highest of highs with him doing what he does. And this team, this offense is going to go as Jalen Hurts goes. You mentioned Kellen Moore. Obviously, we left the coordinators off this list who are going to be very important. Yeah. And as we get into our minds of how deep and fun and exotic Kellen Moore's offense might look, it's also going to be simpler for Jalen Hurts, like you said. Because, you're going to get the pre-snap motion and you're going to get all these guys lined up in different spots and getting guys involved early in different ways. But to your point, like, Kellen Moore is a smart enough man as an offensive coordinator to know, let's get Saquon Barkley the ball in space. Let's use Dallas Goedert over the middle of the field on a 5-yard hitch route on a 3rd and 3, right? Like, those things are going to be utilized. So while it's going to look more like crazy and more fun than we've seen, more intricate than we've seen, it's also going to be simpler for Jalen Hurts.
Yeah. And I think to your point about Saquon and Goddard, it's like, sometimes it does feel like we're like, I don't know if it's Hurts, if it's the coaching staff, whoever. It feels like we're searching and starving for that big play, that 40-yard pass downfield. You dump it off to Saquon, you dump it off to Goddard, it can turn into a 40-yard game after the catch. Like, that's what we need to realize here is the playmakers that we really have here. So, yeah,
1,000%, I do, man. And the last thing with Jalen, like you said, just the parts of his game that I need to see him bounce back from. I really believe that knee injury. I think the Eagles downplayed it as best they could. Yeah. He played through it like a warrior. I will give him that credit. Yeah. But it hurt him and it hurt this offense just as much as Brian Johnson and all hurt this offense, right? And losing A.J. Brown for an extended period of time. So when you have that in mind, and they lost Dallas Goedert for an extended period of time. There were a lot of injuries last year that we don't like to think about, but there were kind of, man. So
don't like to make excuses, but
yeah, right. But Jalen just reading versus zone defense, right? We know what he can do with his legs versus man, and we know what these weapons can do one-on-one. Reading his zone defense, picking up different blitz packages, and that all goes to play calling as well. But getting back to that, immaculate deep ball that we saw in 2022, making the right reads, not forcing the ball, getting the turnovers down, all those things. This offense will run as Jalen Hurts runs. Agree with you.
Have fun. Like, try to have some fun this year, Jalen. Like, that's really what it is. Like, it's sticking in my head, man. I was going through pictures and stuff, and I got all the way back to like the Super Bowl year, and I remember him, just jumping out of the tunnel, like flexing, and it's like, I want to see that Jalen come back, the comfortable, the happy Jalen.
It does make you wonder, man. Like that again. I hate to go back to excuses, but that knee injury, him knowing I can only give you this much every Sunday,
the joy out of it. Yeah.
So exactly, because he's in a limited position here, man. So Lane Johnson, Jalen Hurts, those are on the offensive side of the ball. Continue. You had what? Jalen Carter, C.J. Gardner-Johnson, and Saquon Barkley is your other three, right?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
All right, real quick. Saquon Barkley, I'll stick on the offensive side here. For all the reasons you listed, he is just a difference maker. He is a game changer, a game wrecker, an explosion waiting to happen every time he touches the football. People want to talk about the injury history, all of that stuff. I think he's that much of a difference maker when it comes to what this offense's ceiling can be, especially with a new coordinator, man. Like how much you get him the ball, having a 3-down back, and overall that just disguises everything so much better. Like how many times did we know if Kenneth Gainwell checked in that it was going to be a pass on 3rd and short because they needed the pass protection? And you just don't know now. So he's an ultimate weapon. Get him the ball as much as humanly possible without running his body into the ground year one of a 3-year deal, okay? I mean, you want to talk about excited to see a new toy be used? I can't wait for them to use Saquon Barkley and see what he looks like in an Eagles uniform.
Hey, check these comments. My man Marshawn's trying to go in on Jalen right now in the comments here.
Brother.
But look, I agree. Do feel it. Like we try not to make excuses. It's not, there's no excuse for it, but your injured knee can get into your head in a sense, man. It can make you make decisions that you normally wouldn't make if you can't get out of situations.
No. And I also want to point out, like, he knows, bro. You were watching with us who the first person was to talk about that Seattle game. Remember he was sick before the game and everyone was giving him all those issues? Bro, come on, man.
And this is the other side of it, though. To be fair to Marshawn's point, he balled out against Buffalo. But I don't know. I don't know, man. We're not trying to excuse Jalen's play last year.
And also the knee has almost nothing to do with the decision making. We understand. I'm talking about the total package when it comes to Jalen Hurts' issues last year. Himself, the injury, and the play calling being no help. So if you are injured with a bum knee, and I mean, I think it's very obvious if you take the side-by-side clips of him rushing the ball in 2022 and rushing the ball after the knee injury in 2023, there's a clear difference in Jalen Hurts moving. And then secondly, if you're the worst team against the blitz, your offensive coordinator is giving you no help, you're missing Dallas Goedert and A.J. Brown for the second half of the season, I'm just saying. I wholeheartly agree, bro. Like, James,
this is an entire organization for a collapse like that. Like,
this is a money year for Jalen Hurts. He has to bounce back, but you can't do this. You can't just ignore what Brian Johnson was or wasn't. You can't ignore what Sirianni looked like. Correct.
Sirianni, Brian Johnson.
Jalen Hurts gets a large chunk of the blame. We talked about it all last year when things were going south, but you can't ignore everything else that went into it as well. Now I need to see him bounce back with the new coordinator, with the new weapons, etc.
Everything's in place. There's really no excuses this year. I did see Diana Rossini on her podcast saying right before we got on here saying that last year was all Nick Sirianni. It wasn't Brian Johnson. everything we saw on the field was Nick Sirianni.
I didn't see
And that
that, but
every
that's
single one
interesting.
of those wins in the first 10 wins of the season were like the biggest feats in the world because of the tension and the things that were going on in the locker room. So
Yeah.
that is something that was released by Diana Rossini. Is that what I said? Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's her name. But yeah, the
Yeah, it
NFL
is.
reporter.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
I
might have
just
been Nick Sirianni. Nick Sirianni could have been first on the list if we
Right.
include coaches, because just stay out of the way. Be the
Right.
head of the head of the wagon here, and that's all you got to do. You don't have to get involved in the details, man.
No, and this is where we agree. And this is what I'm talking about. This is a money year for Jalen Hurts.
Yeah.
You played
Yeah.
at MVP level. We know what you did in the Super Bowl. You got the bag. You came back. You struggled mightily last year. The team had its worst implosion that I've seen in my lifetime with you under center. Got it. Now I need to see you bounce back as a quarterback. I'm hoping he gets back to top 5 MVP form. I'm completely fine if he's top 10 and right around there with these weapons and these skill sets. Lower the turnovers, better the decision making, use your mobility more, and this offense will hum.
It's really
listen.
It's the turnovers. I think if he
agree with Martian
those turnovers in half, completely different season last year. Honestly, he had 15 interceptions. That's just so uncharacteristic of a guy that plays the way
I
Jalen
just
Hurts
don't
plays.
want him to be this controversial figure that he kind of is right now in the eyes of fans. It's it's not as split as when he first got here. I was not a Jalen Hurts guy. You know this. At the end of the Carson Wentz era, the pick, taking over, handing him the reins, everything. I was not a Jalen Hurts guy. He changed my mind greatly in year number 2. He took a few steps back last year. Now we need to build that trust back up, but I don't want it to be so divisive and split where we're back to half the fan base just loves them blindly because they love the person and the work ethic and yada, yada, yada.
Yeah.
And the other half despises them and thinks that we're never going to win anything with it. We already know they can win.
That we can.
We've seen it. So
yeah.
We'll see,
it's
man.
It's really the turnovers, man. The turnovers.
Like, right. Like he had almost as many turnovers last year as he had in his first 2 years combined as a starter.
19 turnovers last year.
Right. Exactly. So we'll see. Well, that's all I'll say is we'll wait and see, and we'll take it week by week when it comes to Jalen and this offense again. Saquon said it, dynamic. CJ Gardner-Johnson, real quick, not to keep this conversation dragging on too long, but CJ Gardner-Johnson, I agree with you, man. I think he brings a personality to a defense that was so lackluster last year, so weak in just every facet, just mentally, physically, talent. They were weak. You didn't know what kind of, like, if you go back to a year prior to that season where they were weak, they led the league in sacks. They were breaking franchise records or NFL records. They were a tough, strong-nosed defense that had a lot of swagger to them. Last year, they lost all of that. CJ Gardner-Johnson brings that back probably to the core, meaning the back half of the defense that needs it the most. We talk all the time about that San Fran pregame. James Bradbury getting bitched out by half of the Niners team, and he and no one doing a thing about it. They ran their mouths heading into the link. They bullied them pregame. They beat the shit out of them and then laughed afterwards, and we did nothing about it except fall apart from that point on in the season. They were weak. CJ Gardner-Johnson not only brings a ton of talent, but swagger, physicality, toughness. It gives you a different personality defensively. I love the re-addition of CGJ. Lastly, fifth as well, Jalen Carter. And I think this is important to note as well. People, I think, go back and forth between Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis. Who's more important? They do things differently, right? Jordan Davis, big run-stopping D tackle. Jalen Carter, one of the more like physical, ferocious, get after the quarterback type of D tackle. Jalen Carter's expectations and ceiling were so high coming out of Georgia last year. Top 10 pick. No one knew how he fell to us at the end of the top, 8, 9, wherever. I forget where we got him specifically. But we saw it obviously in the first half of the year. We remember week 1 against the Patriots, the game record that he was, and we saw it throughout a couple different moments. But he was part of a rotation, and he's a rookie. And we talked about just in the past, not taking the training wheels off of these guys early enough. Year 2 for him, there should be no training wheels on. If we're being honest, with Hassan gone now, he might be the most talented player on the defensive line for the Philadelphia Eagles. He has to be an impact player. He has to play a ton, and he has to get after the quarterback in the middle of this line for this team this year.
I think if he's not the most talented on the defensive line, then we're in trouble. Like, that's the way I look at this situation with Jalen Carter is he has to be the guy on the defensive line because he is, in my eyes, the only guy that can end up top 10, top 5 in his position group. Like,
I agree.
Josh Sweat is a good edge rusher. He's a good guy.
Josh Sweat is a role player.
Has looked good. Bryce Huff could, right? Like maybe. We don't know. We didn't watch him a ton for the Jets last year.
Yeah.
He was in a rotation last year, still had 10 sacks.
Yeah.
Does that increase with a bigger role?
Yeah.
Or does the production just stay the same, even though you're in a bigger role, so it's not as good production? We have to wait and see with him, but Jalen Carter really is that like game-changing player on the defensive line for my money, man. I do agree with everything you said there.
Yeah, and that's my first half. I completely agree with you, man. I spoke long enough. We got into a deep Jalen Hurts conversation. We said it though, man, right? And Martian, I know we go against it sometimes. We're pushing the positivity train for all Philadelphia sports.
We're trying
it's
here.
Going to include early training camp question marks when it comes to Jalen Hurts. But give me your back half, man. Give me your 6 through 10, and then we'll see where we stack up from there.
Yes, sir. So 6 through 10. Number 6, I went with AJ Brown. For him, it's pretty simple, right? He's the security blanket, Jalen's best friend. He can be your third down guy, your possession guy, your big play guy. He can do everything. And quite honestly, for my money, I do think he is like the best player on the Philadelphia Eagles. Like, when it comes to talent within their position group, I do think AJ Brown is the most talented, the best player on the team at football. That being said, he comes in at number 6 for me. His numbers speak for themselves, right? Landon Dickerson, Jordan Mailata are my next 2. Same thing as Lane Johnson, man. This whole offensive line, these guys have to step up. You could even throw Cam Jurgens in there, being a second-year starter now. These guys have to step up. Not even step up. They have to be who they're expected to be for this line to be good. If they're better than expected, then this line will be great. And so that's where I'm looking at our 3 cornerstones there, but you can even throw Cam Jurgens in there as well. Then 9 and 10. So at 9, I went with Dallas Goedert. Think him staying healthy. You kind of don't notice how important Goddard is until he is injured, if that makes sense, right? Like, the blocking that he adds to the team from the tight end position is so important in the run game. Even when he's called to stay back and pass protect, it's so important. Being that dump off option, similar to Saquon, I think that's going to be important this year. Kellen Moore loves his tight ends. Can we get a full season from Dallas Goedert? A full top 5, top 6 tight end season from Dallas Goedert, because it will add such a different dynamic to the offense. And then number 10 to round out my top 10 here. This is where it got tough because there's a bunch of guys that I could throw in here. I haven't mentioned like Smitty, for example. I think he's one of the best players on the team. Right. Is he one of the most important? I mean, it's arguable, right?
Right. If Smitty goes down, like, I think health, you got to put health aside. Like, we can't say if this person goes down, it's everyone's healthy now. Who's the most important?
Who's important?
Right.
That's a good point. Because Smitty. That when you said that, I'm like, oh shit, that would be a big deal. Darius Slay is who I went with at number 10. And the reason I did this because we basically right now are assuming that we just have one corner role to fill, right? CB2. That's the role that we need Quinyon Mitchell to step into and become that guy out of the draft. If Darius Slay is not CB1 material, then we have a much bigger problem. We're going to have to find 2 starting corners, right? Now, that being said, we do have the depth that you would like to see behind him, to be fair. But I don't think Darius Slay is washed just yet. I think with the right group around him, the right group of young talent around him specifically, I think he can have a pretty good season here at CB1.
I agree.
And hold it down for us. So I went with Darius Slay just because we can't afford to have any further holes that we're not expecting in that defense. So that rounds out my top 10 there, man.
So that means we have two of the same. And then I'll get to my difference makers. All right. So first and
All right,
foremost, AJ Brown would be next. And I was going to say this when you were talking, but I'll throw it out for a question now. And the chat, let us know your thoughts as well. Scotty said, pound for pound, he thinks AJ Brown is like the best football player, and that might be the better way to look at it. But when we get into position, let's put like offensive line aside, because like Lane at the right tackle is the best of his position, etc. But it made me think of another guy we have on this list at a skill position. Is AJ Brown a better wide receiver than Saquon Barkley is a running back? And how close is that margin? I'm saying it as a positive. Like they have these two guys now. Because before it was I agree with you. Before it was undoubtedly AJ Brown at a skill position at his wide receiver spot is the most talented of any position we have, blah, blah, blah. Saquon bridges that gap.
Talent. Yeah. Talent is the key there. When you talk about talent, the best football player. Yeah. Saquon's in that conversation. I guess I just go with AJ talent plus the production the last couple of years.
Right.
Like AJ has been up there, but no, that's a fair point. Saquon's in that combo. Lane Johnson, to your point, is in that combo. Even
right. I think we have to put like the line aside, because it's like, like pound for pound, Lane. If Lane's the best right tackle, Lane's the best player because Lane is the best at his position.
He came in number 3 according to ESPN. So
right.
So you know.
Okay. I was just thinking, we went through these player rankings at skill position, and I'm like, well, if AJ's 5 or 6 receiver and Saquon's 3 running back, where are we stacking this up at? But my point of being is it's a great thing to have. AJ Brown, for all the reasons you said, man. I mean, he is, you want to talk game wrecker, game changer. Let's just go through the film of his first 2 years. You want to talk big moment after big moment. You want to talk the Steelers game. You want to talk the Titans game. You want to talk Giants game. You want to talk the big touchdown in the Super Bowl. You want to, whatever you want to get into. AJ Brown, you want to talk the Bears game where it was windy and they were throwing, and he had 100 some plus.
Yeah.
His first game at Ford Field against the Detroit Lions went the fuck off. Like, we can talk about all these moments with AJ Brown, man. He's a top 5 or 6 receiver in the National Football League with the ceiling of being a top 2 or 3 receiver in the National Football League, for my money. I said it to you the other day, how Mike Evans is like your prototype. I mean, AJ Brown is as close to your prototype physically, footwork, speed.
Mike Evans,
hands.
A little bit taller than AJ?
Yeah, but AJ's bigger in stature, probably, right? Like, so he is a legit physical freak. And you put that on the field with all these other weapons. I think having Saquon too, to my point, is only going to elevate AJ Brown's production. Because I know people look at it like, oh, well, there's another person to get the ball to. There's only one ball. He's not going to go for, 1,300 yards again, whatever. I look at it and say, maybe, but maybe this just gives him a lot more one-on-one opportunities on the outside, and he just kills DBs for a living this year. So we'll see, man. That Steelers game was fucking ridiculous 2 years ago. Like, he has so many moments. And he is, like you said, probably the best football player on this team, and that's why he's on this list, man. So we need him to stay healthy. He's obviously bought in. He signed the extension here. He's happy to be here. So let's get to work. Dallas Goedert, I also have on this list. I didn't want to go too offense heavy. We have Saquon, we have AJ, we have our quarterback. But Dallas Goedert is important, man. I think it's been known, it's been shown, proven to us over the last couple of years. You have to get this man involved. What it does for this offense, what it opens up in the middle of the field when he's involved versus when he's not. Life is a lot more difficult for Jalen Hurts when he's injured or when he's not involved in the game plan. When he's involved in the game plan, the offense fucking hums. So get this man the ball. I agree with you. He is still, to me, physically and talent-wise, a top 5 tight end in the National Football League. I know he's been surpassed by some of the young guys in terms of production and numbers, and he's been injured. He's got to stay on the field. I know that. But talent-wise, he has the ability to be top 5. Kellen Moore and Jalen Hurts find ways to get this man the ball. Even early in the games, that Rams game, do you remember that drive last year on the road versus LA? He went down, had 3 catches, scored. We went up 7-0 right off the bat. Nothing ever again. That just can't happen this year, man.
Yeah, it makes no sense.
Dallas Goedert getting involved is huge. Like you said, the yak with him as well. Do you remember that play when he got called for a face mask? When his helmet got ripped off against the Cowboys, and he broke it loose for like a 30-yard run after the catch. That's what this dude does. The Giants one-hand catch in the divisional round, spin off a tackle, find your way in the end zone. He's a physical freak as well. Get him the goddamn ball. Next, I'll stick offense, but I'm going to go the offensive line. And I love that you went the other two because I did go with Cam Jurgens here because you are the GOAT's replacement. That's why I went with Cam Jurgens here. You have to get that relationship with Jalen Hurts down, man. And I know Jalen outside the tush push doesn't really get up under center. So it's a different snap, obviously handling of the ball. So if he's in the gun a lot, obviously that makes life a little bit easier probably for you. But Jalen as well. Like, I don't remember when Jalen went on the New Heights podcast and talked about like how Jason has like the craziest release and like catching the ball for him the craziest thing he's ever done for, behind any center. Well, now you have a different one. So just getting that relationship down, Cam, kind of being the focal point of this line, right? Being the center, like getting everything ready pre-snap. Obviously no one's expecting you to produce like Jason Kelce by any stretch, but you have to produce. And now you're going from playing that guard position to a new position in center. No, new position, I should say. He's played it before, but that's where he's going to be this year. So I think he is incredibly important to what this team's going to do this year offensively. My last two, man.
Being go ahead. No, I was just saying, like, being unnoticeable on the offensive line would be a big accomplishment.
Would be a good thing. Yeah. If I don't hear your name called, like for negative reasons, mishandling of the snap, penalties, whatever,
you're doing your
job. Fine by me, brother. Like, I don't need you to stand out like Jason would when you'd get to the next level and just truck two safeties to open up a hole. I don't need that from you. It would be great if you have that in your tank. Yeah. But if I don't notice you as an offensive lineman, it's a good thing. It's not a great thing. It's great to notice when guys are just, dominating a matchup on the edge, but that's not what you're going to see from a center. So,
and to your point, it almost adds even more value to Saquon Barkley because maybe Cam Jurgens can't get out there and make those run blocks like Jason Kelce, right? But that's why you have Saquon Barkley, because he can get through things that our other running backs couldn't. So, yeah, man.
And I'm glad Darius brought this up too, because we agree with you, man. I mean, I know I do. Scotty talked about the other day.
Yeah,
we didn't do this. We kept it to players, but if we did the coordinators and coaches, Kellen Moore might have been number 2 on my list, number 3 on my list in a ranking, because I think I know what Martian's saying. We do have to hold players accountable. You can't just look at the play calling overall. I think the difference going from a Nick Sirianni and Brian Johnson ran offense to what Kellen Moore can do with all this talent, the most talent he's ever had. Like, I don't care what he had in Dallas, brother. This is the most talent he's had on an offense. You want to say Dak's a better thrower of the football? Whatever. I don't really care. He didn't have Saquon Barkley, A.J. Brown, Smitty, Goddard, this line fully helped. Like, he just didn't. So a mobile quarterback the way Jalen can run. So I'm super excited to see the difference in the ins and outs of this offense, man.
It's like going from a basic bitch to like a bad, bitch. Like, that's what it's like. Like, we had the basic ass offense last year, like 3 different plays that we could run, a screen to a wide receiver, a QB tush push, and then shotgun.
A QB
like,
draw,
that was 3
draw on 3rd and 13. Yeah. Yep. But to wrap this conversation up, man, my last 2. And I brought up that comment from him because my last 2 are on the defensive side of the ball. So my number 9 is Bryce Huff. I think when you make the move, and again, we know Hassan he's ranked outside the top 10. I still think he's top 10. But if you're a question mark to be top 10 at your position, you can't be fucking paid like your top 2 or 3 at said position, buddy. Yeah. Now you see him, all the weird stuff he's doing, being in Japan, not reporting for them. The Jets fucked up too. Like I said, like you knew he wanted to be traded because he wanted an extension. How are you not going to extend him after trading for him? Like, that's stupid as well.
Yeah.
But if you're going to move on from Hassan Reddick, you have to have a plan in place. And their plan was very clear. I mean, they went out and got Bryce Huff immediately from the Jets as well, signing from the Jets. And I know Darius was commenting about it earlier, talking about I think it was Darius, or was it Hunter? I'm forgetting. But basically one of them was talking about the upside of and the projection of what Bryce Huff is going to be. I think he's 25 years old, Scotty, and they're looking at him going into his prime. Can they get him at the perfect time? He has to be a game wrecker for this team, man. Like we have hope for Nolan Smith. We like Josh Sweat. We're glad Brant BG's back for his farewell tour. But that's all you have on the edge, bro.
Yeah.
Like Bryce Huff needs to have double-digit sacks for this team.
Yeah.
He has to. So if you're going to move on from a guy like Hassan Reddick, bring in this replacement plan, he has to see it through. He has to be productive this year. Yeah. So I think he's very important to what Vic Fangio and this defense wants to do. I think he will. I think he's super fast, athletic, strong, coming off the edge. And if Vic uses him like that, hey, brother, get on the edge and do your thing, snap after snap. You're going to get production from Bryce Huff, all right? Lastly, I'm glad you went with that position, and I'm going to say something that kind of sounds like a negative from your point because you talked about if Darius Slay isn't CB1, now we have two problems. I'm not going to view it that way. My number 10 is CB2, Quinyon Mitchell. The training wheels are ripped the fuck off. They never existed. He came out. He's on a Harley, bro. He's not on a bicycle. He's on a Harley. You put this kid across from Darius Slay day one at camp on July 24th. He is one of your starting corners. It stays that way. And I'm going to make a prediction right now. It's not a bad thing to say this because I don't mean it means Darius Slay is not good. But I'm going to say that Quinyon Mitchell, year one, is the best cornerback on this Eagles roster and most productive cornerback on this Eagles roster. And he turns into your quote-unquote CB1. Slay's your two because it's not a negative towards Slay, but I think he's that goddamn talented that he's going to be the best corner on this roster this year.
I hope so, man. I do hope that becomes true. I do. That would be great for the Eagles if that happens because I'm not honestly sure how much longer Slay's really going to be on the roster anyways. So
right.
I don't know if I'm that far yet. I still do believe a lot in Slay. I do think like having better guys around him will allow him to be as good as we've seen in the past, but if Quinyon Mitchell is the first-round pick where we drafted him, if he can step in like a Sauce Gardner, apparently Sauce Gardner is overrated too, in case you didn't know. Okay. But that's beside the point. If Quinyon Mitchell can step in and be that guy for us, then I think maybe we see him as CB1 going into next season, and then we'll be figuring out which one of these other young guys can be CB2 at that point. Maybe it is Cooper DeJean. So. That's another thing, man. I do like it. But
that is another thing. I just spoke very highly on this guy being the best corner on this team because he was pound for pound. We don't know. These are projections, these are predictions, but he was the best prospect at the cornerback position in this year's draft. But you have a guy in Cooper DeJean who is arguably 2 or 3 right behind him, and maybe he impacts this defense day one differently. Maybe like I said the other day, he outcompetes at the safety spot. Maybe they test him out at safety, and he's starting next to C.G. Gardner-Johnson at the back end of your defense. I don't know what the plan is, but you have another guy out there who day one can impact this defense in such a way that we haven't seen. So, those are our official top 10 most important players, man.
I think that was the tough part for me with this list was on the defensive side of the ball. Like, I'm looking at it now. I think I had 3 defensive players total in my top 10. Those being Jalen Carter, CGJ, and Darius Slay. Went back and forth between Slay and Huff at the end there, just because I do agree with you. I think Huff is super important this year. I think you look at the production, I mean, he's not far off of what Hassan did last year. Hassan had 11 sacks. He had 10. It's just in that larger role. Are we get empty plays from him, or is he going to fulfill in that larger role as well, being impactful all the time that he's on the field? But then you get to guys like Devin White and Nakobe Dean, and like obviously the linebacking core is important, but we don't know who's going to step up and be the leader for that unit,
Right.
right? Like it could be Nakobe Dean, could be Devin White rebound season. Like it could be one of these other guys that we're not paying attention to.
Right.
And then the same thing with some of the younger safeties, corners, like Reed Blankenship. Reed Blankenship's important. Cooper DeJean's important. Like Isaiah Rodgers might be important. Like so on and so forth. The defense was quite honestly the toughest to gauge for me because even Josh Sweat, he's going to be important this year coming from the other side of the D line. But I do I love what you said about Quinyon Mitchell. I think that is something to look for this season. Because if we can have him step up like that, that's going to give us a lot of stability moving forward, especially on the defensive side of the ball. Nolan Smith, that's a good call out as well.
Yeah, there's
Especially
been a
with
couple
that
players.
edge
I think it was
impact. Yeah,
I think it was like you talked about Slay having some leadership. I think it was Slay that came out and talked highly about Nolan Smith this offseason, and what he
love
can do
that,
for this
man.
defense, man.
If he can add from the edge rusher position, that's going to help a fucking lot.
Yeah,
Like
you got to remember, man,
that is one of my bigger worries, man. The edge rusher,
Yeah.
just having multiple. I feel like we've had at least 4 guys that we are comfortable with in the past, but
it's funny. Devin White was this close on my initial list, and then I was like, can I really say Devin White is more important than? And I went down this list and I'm like, I just don't know. Like, and you said something to me the other day, like if you have a very good secondary and you have a defensive line that's getting after quarterback, not to downplay the position, but how important then are your linebackers? Well,
yeah.
That's kind of where I went from that. But yep, and I think the first part of this as well, man, the depth is flashing off the paper right now. Again, it has to pan out.
Yeah.
Some guys aren't going to pan out. Some guys are going to exceed expectations. We don't know everything right now, but
who is going to be the other guard? Who's the other guard?
I was just going to bring that up to you. Tyler Steen is listed on ESPN on their depth chart as the right guard and
starter.
Like, yeah, and I mean, if that is the case, like
wild card.
That could definitely be a guy that's top 10 most important because he's the biggest unknown and he's so important because you can't flop, bro. Like we can't afford you to not hold your own at that position this year. Now, maybe it's not him. Maybe he gets beat out in camp. Maybe it's somebody else. Maybe Matt Hennessy starts, who they brought over, I believe, from the Saints.
That's what I was going to say. Are we locked in with Cam Jurgens at center, or can Matt Hennessy maybe start at center?
That's a good point. I don't know. I would assume the plan is Cam at center simply because stability. I think that's – well, I also think that's like the future plan. So, like,
exactly.
No more placeholders.
That's what I struggled with the OL. Like, obviously, Cam Jurgens, if it's Tyler Steen, if it's Matt Hennessy, those guys are important as well. It's the offensive line as a unit. So I struggle like going back and forth, like guys that need to step up and fulfill, or guys that just need to hold down the fort. Because if Lane, Landon, and Jordan Mailata are manning this offensive line as all pros, the offensive line's going to be pretty good regardless of the performance from the others, as long as they're just being like at least average. But yeah, if Cam Jurgens and Tyler Steen or whoever it is steps up, and this can be an elite offensive line. That's what we're looking at here.
I agree, bro. All right, let's move on. We're going to be talking plenty of Eagles obviously next week as we get into training camp and the weeks and weeks to come. Preseason football will be right around the corner, man. See, that's another thing. Again, I know I'll probably end up turning it off after the first fucking drive, but the Hall of Fame game, like I'm going to tune in to the beginning of the Hall of Fame game. I don't care.
You're the commentator, right?
I just want to watch a football game. I was going to say professional football game. I don't know how professional it's going to be. I don't know how many pros you're actually going to have out there on the field come once week 1 starts. But I just want to see football, man. We're about to talk Sixers, but first of all, brother, let's get this straight. The Birds come first. Sorry, not really, but kind of. Like it is turning into football season a lot more quickly, and
Marshall be fiending for the Sixers, bro.
I love it.
Don't forget what they did to you. Like, don't forget. Like,
that is the funny part, man. No. He always comes off as Mr. Negativity when we want to be positive, and he's so quickly forgetting that pain from last year. I know he is. I'm just fucking around. Let's talk about that. It did drop yesterday, man, and I have some thoughts, and I saw your tweets earlier, and it kind of is where I'm at, right? Like, how much at the end of the day, if it were to happen, is it really gonna affect me personally or like mentally? Like, am I really gonna care all that much when it happens? But I will put down
Right.
my stance right now.
Yeah.
The answer is no. The
Yeah.
answer is a firm, firm no.
Yeah.
For so many reasons. So first things first, and here's the one issue with what my first opinion is. They're most definitely moving. Like, I don't think they're
Yeah.
staying in the Wells Fargo Center in a couple years when that contract is up, because the Flyers and Comcast own that building. So whether it is 76th Place, downtown, Chinatown, wherever they want to do it, like, that sucks too. I don't know how many Sixers games I'm going to be getting to from that standpoint, but there's something
Yeah.
special about the sports complex. There's something special about all four teams, Xfinity Live, being down there, the lots, the tailgating, everything.
Yeah.
And to take that away sucks, but it does seem like that's coming. The reason you don't move them, okay, first and foremost, like, I hate. Let's just go through the history, right? This would have to be the name. Like, I know it doesn't make much sense. They can only be called the Sixers from now on.
Yeah.
They cannot be called the 76ers. Let's run through
Camden cannot
a quick
have the
fucking
declaration,
history
bro.
lesson, okay? Scotty, answer this question for me. Ready, bud? Why are they called the 76ers?
Because
Seems
the
like an
Declaration
important
of
year.
Independence was signed in the nation's first capital, Philadelphia.
In what year?
That is why.
In
1776.
1776. That is the name of the organization.
That's like my
So you
biggest
can't
issue.
move them. You can't move them out of the city and out of the goddamn state that holds the city and still call them the 76ers. They're not they're not the Flyers. They're not the Phillies. They're not the Eagles. They're not just a cool. I mean, I know why the Eagles are called the Eagles. Duh, okay, duh. But what my point is, it's like they were called that for an historical reason. You can't then move them out of the goddamn state and still call them that name. Secondly, everyone wants to bring up, well, the Jets and the Giants don't play in New York, and they're still New York.
That's not the goal.
I laugh at them. I laugh at the fact that they play at a shitty stadium in North Jersey. I don't want to be one of those organizations. No, the answer is a hard no. You don't do it. Okay, I don't care about the parking. I don't care about whatever. No.
Yeah.
And
I don't care
about this facility is there.
Either.
Why Camden? If you're gonna, why are we going to fucking Camden?
Yeah, I don't understand it, man. I always thought, like, if they're gonna move the arena, Penn's Landing, where they were trying to put it before, is the area, right down there by the dock and by the bridge and everything, and it's right across the bridge from Camden. So you go from your practice facility over the bridge to your arena, right? But no, I agree, man. It's all about the history for me. If you change the name, it's no longer the Philadelphia 76ers. Like, we are a long-standing organization in the NBA. Like, there's no need to change the name. So if you're not changing the name, then I don't think you can change the city. And like, it's like the very basic level for me. I get it. It might be easier. There's a lot of people, a lot of Sixers fans that live in South Jersey. It might be
I am one of them.
Get there.
It's an easier commute for me. I don't care.
It's not going to make a difference for me. Like, either way, it's going to be the same distance, same time of travel for me to get there from where I live in Philly. So it's not about that. It's really just about the historical standpoint of the organization. And then also just the simple fact of being in Philadelphia. Like, it's the city. Like, that's the point of being the Philadelphia 76ers. So I don't know. It's like, if like Philadelphia, like the group of people down in Chinatown, if that's where they want to have it, the 76ers place over in Penn's Landing, if we can't get people in Philadelphia to support the organization from the standpoint of allowing them to build the fucking arena that they want to build in Philadelphia, then I guess we don't deserve a basketball team. At the end of the day, if we have to move to a different state to get like respect to build an arena, then we don't deserve the team in the first place. And so I don't know how I'll feel like if it ends up happening. I know, very instant reaction yesterday, I said I just won't root for them. Like, I'm not rooting for a New Jersey team. Like, I'm not rooting for a New Jersey team. So if they change the name, I definitely will not be rooting for the 76ers. I'll probably just become an NBA fan in general. But that's sad, man. Like to even have to like think about doing that. Like I shouldn't have to do
It
that. And
is it
so
is one of
it's
the
sad where it's
most
like
historical
heading towards.
franchises, not only in the association, but in all of professional sports. It's one of the most storied
Yeah.
historical franchises.
Yeah. Like if
And
DC is a much I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. DC is a much smaller city than Philadelphia in a sense, but they can get an arena right in the
yeah,
downtown of their city.
bro,
Like
everywhere. Look at New York
everywhere.
City,
Yeah,
as
literally
crowded and
everywhere.
packed as that is, the goddamn subway comes up into you can get off the subway into Madison Square Garden.
Yeah, literally.
Like, so I don't
Literally.
want to hear like, oh, I don't know. I agree with you, man. And I
I do agree
live,
with you. I
I
would
am
love to
a
keep the
resident
complex
of
where it
New Jersey.
is,
Yeah, I
but
am a South Jersey resident, and I agree with you. I'm not doing it. You cannot do it.
yeah,
I've
it's
been
the principle,
rooted.
man. It's
First of all,
exactly
let's
what
get
you
one
said
thing
about
straight.
the Giants and the
It's on my
Jets, man.
fucking body. So how about
Yeah.
we not just screw that up for me? Okay, like
Man, it's just like everything else we talk about. Like there's a reason I don't like the extra game in the NFL. There's a reason I don't like if they were to shorten the NBA season. Like you're destroying history. Like we can no longer compare like NFL statistics to previous statistics because there's a different amount of games. Can no longer compare NBA statistics if they shorten the season, right? So like if you win an NBA championship with a shortened season, it doesn't mean as much, right? Embiid didn't have to stay healthy for 82 games and then play playoffs. Like it all feeds into those ideas and why I push back on changing the game and changing the sport so much is just the historic standpoint. Like Dr. J, Wilt Chamberlain, like Philadelphia, man, like that Allen Iverson. Like I mean, these are historical standpoints for the Philadelphia 76ers. And so and like right now, talking about it right now too, I think is bothering me because we are at such a pristine like point with this off season that we just shouldn't have to be arguing about this shit.
Here's the thing, right? It's not happening like anytime in the near future. Like even
right, it would be
even if they sign the bill, even if they sign the contract today that they are moving.
Yeah.
Their contract isn't even up until like 2028, 2030 or something like that. Like when they were talking about doing the 76 place in Chinatown, that was like it would be open by 2030. Joel Embiid won't even be a goddamn 76er anymore. Tyrese Maxey is going to be past his prime. And again, I'm not saying, oh, well, I'm just here for these two. I'm trying to be my lifetime, but like, you know what I mean? It's not like, oh, 2 years from now, while Paul George is in a 76ers uniform, we have this debate if we want them to play in Jersey or not. They'll still be there, but yeah.
I do get what Marshawn's saying. Like, what's the difference? That's why I say it's like,
but
it's not
just,
the end of the world. Like, I don't know how I'll
different.
react, but it is different. It is different. We do clown.
I clown the New York teams that do it.
We clown the New York teams, the New Jersey Giants and Jets, man. Like, no, I don't know, Marshawn.
I'm going to be honest with you, bro. I'm being serious in a way. I'm almost more okay with this name than I am trying to keep the 76ers name but moving them.
Yeah.
If you relocate them literally 2 steps over the Ben Franklin Bridge on the other side, and they're now the Camden Sixer or whatever the case may be, like at that point, you have to rename the team. You cannot be called the Camden 76ers. It's like a fucking historical artifact. Let's just go behind the history and the reasoning of it.
Like, are we trying to like step into like the New Jersey like Nets? Like
whoa, wait a second.
We're approaching. I know it's completely different parts of
You're from
Jersey,
Canada, bro?
You didn't know that? Yeah, I knew Marshawn was a Canadian resident.
How did you know that?
He said like different things like about hockey before. I feel like when we've talked about it, like about him being Canadian. I didn't know that he like genuinely still lives there. But
time out. You should know your puck then, bro. So when I want to talk Flyers, you should be in the goddamn comments talking puck. Or am I stereotyping Canadians? I don't know.
You might be, but I think it's fair nonetheless. There is a lot of Canadian hockey culture, but No, man, I think it is it's interesting with the Camden thing, man. Part of me is also like, is Josh Harris just pushing this, with the New Jersey Devils and shit? Like, is that what we're doing here? Because
By the
like,
way,
chill
speaking
out.
of like Sixers, like ownership and former ownership and stuff, did you see Michael Rubin throw a baseball?
I did not.
You did it?
I saw the video. I didn't even click on it, but
You should see it.
I
It like
said like Michael
astounds me,
Rubin is
bro.
not an
It
athlete.
astounds me how these dudes involved in professional sports or talk about sports in any capacity or have a media job. Like, look, I didn't play sports at a high level, but like I can throw a fucking ball. Can you throw? Can I throw a football 50 yards? Yeah. Can I throw a baseball in the high 60s? Yeah. But like he literally looked like he never picked up a baseball before in his life.
He is a weirdo too, man. I mean, I know
He's so
he
weird. He's so weird. It
gets down
mind
on the
boggles me
interwebs, but
that he like is in this group, like he has this crowd. Like the fact that he is so goddamn wealthy,
yeah.
yet so nerdy and white that he has the like cachet to fucking have each and every athlete, celebrity, rapper, everybody under his roof getting blacked out at a party every summer. Shut the fuck up. First, go down one comment. No, one comment. Get the fuck out of here, dude.
Dylan is tall, man. He's like, yeah, he's pushing like Embiid size, dog.
Yeah, slightly taller.
Don't want to play basketball with Dylan, man.
Oh, and you
Body.
liar. You would be there in a fucking second with an invitation. You'd be there in a second.
Would you wear all white? How about wear a white tee?
I'd wear white from head to toe, dude.
First white tee, some white forces,
Yeah.
some white basketball shorts.
All right, let's move on to our final segment of today's show because Scotty texted me earlier and said he's got something to do after this. Let's keep it under an hour. We're now an hour and 2 minutes in, and we still have a Philly segment to get into, so I don't want to take too much time. But Phillies
We
MLB,
went an hour and 40 the other day. So.
that is true. Yeah. Phillies in the MLB return to action today out of the All-Star break. They head to Pittsburgh. They're taking on the Pirates on a 3-game set. And obviously, you and I have talked about this lengthy schedule for the Phillies over the rest of July and into August, dude. It is wild. If you guys weren't tuned in with us the other day, basically here it is. They're at Pittsburgh for this 3-game set. It looks like they're avoiding Paul Skeens. He's not going to be on the mound, so that obviously is a positive. But after that, you go on the road, you're at the Twins, then you're home versus the best team in the AL and the Guardians. You're home versus the Yankees. You travel across the country to a first-place team in the Mariners. Then you go down a little bit. You play a 3-game set in LA versus the Dodgers. Then you go down and you play a 4-game set in an NLCS rematch against the Diamondbacks, who are much better now than they were in the very beginning of the year. That leads you into August 12th, okay? So from July 19th to August 12th, that's the Philly schedule with no break in between. Like no Marlins, no Rockies, no nothing in between.
And you get 2 series against the Braves after the 12th as well in that month of August.
And the Astros, and you head to Kansas City and play a good young Royals team. Like, into September is a tough stretch. Then from September 3rd on, outside of the Brewers, they play all non-playoff teams for the most part. So take advantage, obviously, in September and just do what you can over this coming month, man. But let's get into some predictions, Scotty. I'm going to throw, and you can throw some my way as well. But I want to ask you for your opinion here. Most important starter, man. Obviously, Ranger, we know the struggles over his last 3 or 4 starts heading into the break. Sanchez became an all-star reserve. Wheeler's the ace. Nola's been very good, but didn't make an all-star game. Who's the most important starter in the second half of the season?
I think I have to go with Ranger. Just bouncing back and staying at the standpoint that he was at and getting back to the point where he was at earlier on in the season. You hope that getting the rest over the All-Star break can kind of propel him back to where he was. But the main thing, you got to hope that he just didn't run out of gas from what he was doing early on in the season. So I think we've seen Wheeler get into the postseason to be able to maintain his level of play. We've seen Nola. Nola is kind of who Nola is going to be to an extent. Like, he's going to be really good for the most part. He's going to have a bad game here and there. But we've also seen him be pretty good in the postseason.
Yeah.
It's really Ranger Suarez. Like, we've seen Ranger be great in the postseason, so it's not necessarily that's the concern, but that's
in a
also
limited role though.
Seasons. Yeah, limited role during the regular season, not a full-on starter. Correct. So we need to see Ranger get through a full season as a starter.
Yeah.
The playoffs, still have the juice, and be able to play consistently from there. But Christopher Sanchez is interesting as well, obviously making the All-Star game. He's that fourth guy in the conversation there, and you can make a case for him as well. But I am going to go with Ranger Suarez here just because he was so good at the beginning and the first half of the season, basically. Obviously had, four-ish starts there where he just didn't look great. So needs to bounce back to bring that stability back into the starting rotation there.
Yeah, no, I wasn't sure where I was going to go with this answer. And I know people like disagreements more than they like similar thoughts, but I am going to have to agree with you here, man. Like I said, I wasn't sure. I do admire and love the fact that we just have so much faith in Zach Wheeler. Like, he's an afterthought. Like, our number one starter, our most dominant guy, our Cy Young candidate is just like, well, he's going to be at the top. Like, he's up here in the pecking order, so we're not even going to focus on worrying about him. Nola obviously gets you worried here from time to time, but he's been very stellar, man. If the Phillies did not have Christopher Sanchez and Ranger pitching the way they did this year, Nola would have probably been an all-star. But those two were just dominant. The stats, the numbers were there that they made it over them. But I do have to agree with Ranger because I view Ranger, obviously the way he was pitching early on, Cy Young candidate, had top of the rotation type of stuff. But you view Ranger obviously third in the order behind Wheeler and Nola. You view him as that connector, right? From the top guys to the back end. Even though he was pitching like a top end guy, you view him as, okay, you don't want it to be Wheeler day one, and now it is let's take it day by day before we flip the rotation back up. Yeah. When you have Ranger in the middle of this order dominating the way he was, it's such a smooth connecting piece from day one to day 5 in terms of starting days. So he is number one. And like you said, man, I know we're kind of just talking finishing the regular season, but the postseason, right? Like, how important, how fucking huge would it be to have earlier, like, what we've seen from him in his first 10 starts this year to be the guy you get on the bump or close to that guy on the bump in a postseason game. 2 years ago, I mean, for God's sake, he's closing games in the NLCS for the Phillies. He's pitching 1 inning. Last year, he was a starter. Topper was taking him out in the 4th, 5th inning. He was giving him 1.5 times through the lineup and then pulling him. That's not going to be the case this year, hopefully, for him, as long as his arm can maintain. So I agree, man. Seeing him in that role, getting you 6-7 strong innings in a playoff game in the NLDS is going to be humongous for this team, because as great as Christopher Sanchez has been, I don't know that Christopher Sanchez is going to pitch all that much in the postseason. I mean, maybe in a long reliever type of role, but it would be interesting to see what they do. You don't really throw 4 guys out there. So you do need Ranger to be that stellar piece he was, because then if he's not, if his arm gives way, if he's not that guy, now maybe Sanchez is getting the nod to be the 3rd starter in a playoff rotation. And as good as he's been, you can't tell me you're not going to shit your pants every game he has to go out there against the Braves or the Dodgers.
And I think the other side of it as well, like you mentioned Nola, and obviously he's been great this year, but we have seen him have, bombs, like bomb games. Like he has gotten tore up in the past, in random spots. Quite honestly, it's looked like this should be his game to dominate, and then he gets tore up. So, like, if you have a bad Nola game and then Rangers uncertain at the next start, it's like, oh man, we're really not in a good spot. Whereas you could go Wheeler, maybe he dominates, maybe Nola has a questionable game, and then you still got Rangers
Ranger there.
solidified there as your third starter,
Yeah.
man. He needs to be a solidified starter going into the postseason for us. I think that's the biggest thing with Ranger.
No, I think that's a great point.
Maintaining that.
It's a great point. Let's look at the bats now, man. And I
Yes,
know
sir.
that Martian threw a comment out there. What's Dombrowski going to do? The deadline's less than 2 weeks away right now, which I can't wait for. He's going to be busy, man. I don't think there's any question. I think he adds a bullpen arm. I don't know if he adds a fifth starter type of arm to deal with these injuries. And he's definitely doing something in the outfield, whether it's, high risk, high reward, meaning what kind of prospects you got to give up, or a guy like Tyler Ward who can hit for power where you don't have to give up as much. I don't know. Whatever you get is going to be an upgrade for my money. Like it.
The latest rumor I saw was Randy Arozarena.
The Razor okay with moving him. Isaac Paredes and I think it was, who was it? I don't want to say the wrong name because I know the one dude is being charged with doing something incredibly wrong, but is it Wander? No, which one? Yandy Diaz or Wander Franco? Well, Wander Franco is the one that's in trouble. So I think it's Yandy Diaz. They're looking to move as well. But yeah, so Randy Arozarena, Jazz Chisholm still talked about. Bellinger, IL, he would cost a lot, so it doesn't look like he's going to be a move anymore. Luis Robert is obviously the big name target. Brent Rooker made a name for himself in Philadelphia. Obviously, would love to get him out of that poverty franchise of the A's. Like I mentioned, a Tyler Ward. You have a Lane Thomas with the Nationals. There's a couple different ways Dombrowski can go for this outfield spot he's looking to solidify. So everyone just be excited, a little over 10 days until we see what he does, man. But I want to look at this roster as is, Scotty, and let's obviously talk about this with JT Realmuto back in the lineup because he should be returning shortly, I would imagine. And when you do that, you're going down a pecking order of Kyle Schwarber, Trey Turner, Bryce Harper, Alec Boehm, JT Realmuto in the 5, let's just say. Stott, Costi, 6-7, Marsh, Rojas, let's just say 8-9. Now that lineup looks even deeper. That's before making any moves at the deadline. Who are you pinpointing here? I think there's a very popular answer a lot of people are discussing right now on Twitter. He put out a pretty funny Instagram story. I don't know if you saw that. They had me in the first half. It was Bryson Stott put out an Instagram story, and it was one meme where it was like, they had me in the first half, like blah blah.
I can see that.
So that's the popular pick, needing him to be better in the second half. But even with him not producing like we kind of need him to, you still see those classic Bryson Stott at-bats.
Yeah.
Once a night almost.
Working the pitcher.
Working the count, 8, 9, 10, 11 pitches, then blooping a single down the line, taking a walk, whatever it is. So he's been very, very good, Gold Glove-esque in the field. I think he'll turn it around. Who's your guy? That it doesn't have to be someone turning it around. It can be someone on fire that you just think is going to continue to stay on fire to propel this team further.
Man, this one's tough because there's two guys that my mind goes to here, and it's both regarding like staying on track or staying hot right now. I'm gonna go with Alec Boehm. Obviously, being an all-star this year, being in the home run derby, he's built some confidence. He's got Aaron Dolan from ESPN Bet. I mean, my man is on top of the world right now. We've got to stay there because if Alec Boehm can go into the postseason with confidence, I think that's going to be huge for this team.
I think that's
if
a great
he can
point,
continue to bring runs in, rack up RBIs, get those doubles, right? Maybe he starts cranking them out of the park since he's in the home run derby now. But nonetheless, keeping his level of play, remaining there for the rest of the season is huge for me. I don't want to steal your guy, so or it may be your guy. I don't want to say the other name that I had in mind. So I'll throw it to you from there, but then we can talk about him if he's not your guy.
Yeah, so I love the pick, right? Because if you go back to the last 2 postseasons, it's not that he's been bad. Obviously, he's had moments, right? He's hit a couple home runs, he's had a couple doubles, he's whatever. Yeah. But you kind of, what have we been focused? You've had the Costi runs, you've had Schwarber bombs, you've had Bryce moments.
We need a moment.
Bo's just kind of been a guy in the middle back end of this lineup. He got promoted to the cleanup spot last year's postseason. Didn't work out. The offense as a whole was struggling. That's a difference maker behind your top 4, right? If he's a 5th guy that is producing the way he produced in the first half, that's huge for this lineup in itself, man.
Yeah.
I do agree with the
Completely agree.
Bryson Stott point that a lot of people are looking at. He's hitting 238 on the year. It's not good enough. You need him to be more consistent. You need to have a little more power from him, and you need him to just overall be better at the plate. I'd love to tell you it's Nick Castellanos, but I'm past that. I'm over the inconsistency. If
You're
he
gonna
gets
get
on a
what you
hot
get
streak
from
in
him.
the postseason, hitting 6th or 7th for this team, by all means, I will embrace the fuck out of it. But I ain't hoping for it anymore, and I'm not believing it's coming anymore. We'll see.
Fair enough.
I'm going to go with the guy who has been the best player in baseball over the last few weeks, and I'm going to go with Trey Turner.
Yep, that's my other guy.
We know Bryce.
Yeah.
Biggest moments, Bryce shines. Schwarber, you're going to get a couple leadoff Schwarber bombs in a postseason run. You're going to have big moments from him. I know he was good last postseason. After the standing ovation, he locked in and whatever. But he still wasn't this version of Trey Turner in the postseason last year. He had a home run off a stride, or he had a couple, but he was not this. And this is a different animal, dude.
Yeah.
This is a different
talking about a potential best player in baseball.
Yes.
Like the level he's playing at. Like
if he did not miss 6 weeks, he is the leading MVP candidate in the National League right now. I don't care who you want to throw up against him. Like, I mean, I understand. Oh, okay, well, Ohtani, yeah, you might have a fucking point, but the way he's been playing since he's returned from injury, no, he's been just as good as Shohei Ohtani's been for the Dodgers, dude. And that is a difference-making spot for me, especially depending what they do at the deadline, man. If you do get a Robert or a Brent Rooker or someone like that, and now you have Turner sandwiched between Schwarber and Harper sandwiched between Turner and a power hitter like Robert or Rooker.
Yeah.
That just transforms this lineup, and it just makes life so much easier for Trey than it already is at the plate, dude. He's generational right now, what he's doing.
Yeah,
and if
man.
that continues into a playoff,
that's how you win a World Series.
Yeah.
You pair that with Bryce, you maybe get some other hot bats mixed in there, but him playing at this level is how you really get there, man. I'm just looking at his numbers in the month of July. We played half a month, basically. 20 hits this month. He's batting 417 this month. 18 RBIs, 8 home runs this month. And we are at the 19th of the month, right? So
and we didn't play the last like 4 days.
Exactly. It's ridiculous. So you're spot on. That was the other guy I mentioned, man, because he's the other guy on this roster that can play at an MVP level, similar to Bryce Harper. He can reach that level. And if they are both humming going into the postseason, it's a wrap, man. Like, honestly. Like, that's
agree.
Where I'm at.
Trey, and you know what's funny about Trey as well? He's not as drastic as Nick is. But we talk about it in baseball specifically being a momentum sport. Trey, it seems like Trey's very confidence-based almost, right? Like he can get out of a slump a little quicker than most can, but he's very confidence-based. And I think you see that translate to the field. I don't know, you didn't watch much of the All-Star game, but when they were playing in the second inning or so, Bryce, Bohm, and Trey all in the infield were mic'd up with the broadcast. And for the second out of the inning, ball hit towards the gap, Trey lays out, flashes the leather, underhand toss to second base for the out. Like, if you go back to the NLDS in Atlanta versus the Braves last year, I believe it was game 1. I think we were up 3-1 at that point. They had runners on first and second, 1 out. Dive in the hole, flips a double play, inning over, broadcast goes nuts in the 6th inning. This production translates to the rest of his game. It translates to the swagger on the base paths, how aggressive he's going to be. Because remember, in the first half of last year, not only was he not hitting well, when he did get on base, what did we always hear about? Oh, Trey Turner, on the base path, stealing bags. That wasn't happening either because he was too hesitant to make a mistake. He's confident. It translates everywhere else. And to your point, we know what Bryce is. He's the other MVP guy on this team. Schwarber's great, not consistent enough a hitter to be an MVP guy. Bohm has his moments. He's not an MVP. Trey is the guy outside of Bryce that can be the best player on your team at any moment. So,
and as you pointed out, going into this segment, man, you got the schedule coming up after the break here, going into August and throughout August, quite honestly. This is the time to also build. I know it's a tough schedule, but if you can grab some W's, get some runs put up against this good competition, That's just going to build the confidence even higher going into the postseason, letting you know you can beat anyone anywhere. Like going into LA, that's going to be obviously a huge series in August,
Yeah.
man. Going in there and proving that you're able to go in there and beat them on the road, quite
Yeah.
honestly.
Agreed, man.
I saw a post that apparently the Dodgers were jealous because his name was Ben. I can't remember his last name, but he pointed out that the Phillies
Oh,
are
Ben
basically
Verlander.
the best team in the
Yeah.
NL
Yeah.
because they have such great
Camaraderie.
clubhouse
Yeah.
chemistry,
Yeah.
camaraderie. Yeah,
He pointed
exactly.
out that like they all stayed for Bohm during the
In the
Derby,
home run derby.
and
Yeah,
all the Dodgers left besides Tyler Glasnow for Oscar Hernandez, and he won
yeah,
the fucking thing.
yeah, yeah.
Like,
So
yeah, so he was just talking about clubhouse.
actions speak
And
louder
brother,
than
like
words.
this, I was just trying to see real quick before we wrap up when JT's
Yeah,
expected back. 5 days ago, Rob Thompson said on Sunday that JT likely won't be activated from the 10-day IL when the Phillies open their second half schedule Friday. But that gives you some kind of insight that he's not far off, right? So 5 days ago, he likely won't be activated Friday. Okay, but if he's not likely activated Friday, is he activated in the next week after that, week and a half after that?
right.
So we could be a week or two away from JT Realmuto returning, which again, like we talk about that. The best catcher in fucking baseball has only played 51 games this year.
Yeah.
And they won 62 games in the first half. Like we just ignore it. Like, oh
You
yeah,
get
like that's so
JT, you get another
yeah.
outfielder, and then you get another bullpen arm, and then what does this team
Scotty,
really,
bro,
really look
think.
like?
All right, to wrap up the show, I want everyone to do this. When you go to bed tonight, drunk, high, lucid, whatever you are, when you close those eyeballs tonight, think of this for me, all right? Kyle Schwarber, Trey Turner, Bryce Harper, one of Luis Robert or Brent Rooker, Alec Boehm, JT Realmuto 6, Nick Castellanos 7, Bryson Stott 8, Brandon Marsh 9. Just ponder on that as you're closing those eyeballs tonight and
Sounds
think
really
about
good.
what that can do. Because just while they were sweeping the Dodgers and starving off injuries, Brandon Marsh and Nick Castellanos were hitting 4 and 5 for this team. I just told you 7 through 9 is Costi, Stott, Marsh. That's fucking ridiculous, dude. And I say that to say this, Scotty. We've watched some playoff games together last year, and we know that guys can produce at any moment. But when you're in the middle of a game, 1-0, tie game, whatever the case may be, sixth, seventh, eighth inning, every pitch, every out matters. You want a
Yeah.
leadoff guy on base, but we're at our 7, 8, 9, and it's like Costi, Marsh, Rojas. Not that they can't do anything, but
It's a surprise when they do, though.
but you take a breath like, I don't think it's going to be this inning, right? Like we need our heavy.
Yeah.
If Marsh is your 9-hole hitter,
Yeah.
that changes everything. That,
Yeah.
Like there's no weak spot at that point. There's no Rojas waiting around the corner. There's no, you know what I mean? Like I'm not saying he won't play. Like I'm sure they'll still platoon him and Marsh. I'm just saying your A+ lineup would be that lineup with JT back and a trade for a Rooker or a Robert or someone like that for the outfield. That's what this team can fucking look like with the pitching and bullpen they have. Thank you. All right, that's going to wrap up this edition of the Phaithful Phanatics show.
Positive.
We went over a lot. We're an hour and 24 minutes in. Hope your mother-in-law is not like stranded at the airport or something waiting to get picked up.
It's all good.
We'll get you out of here, man. But guys, there are over 33 of you in here right now. A little lower than we would have liked, but nonetheless, still a great show. Love the comments. If you are watching, if you are new to the channel, if you're watching on Twitter, do us a favor. Check out the YouTube link specifically. Subscribe. We are over 140 now on the new channel. We told you guys before. You get us to 200 by the end of the summer, heading into football season. We're going to do the biggest giveaway we've ever done, and we'll continue to do giveaways the more we climb in the subscriptions on YouTube. For myself, for Scotty, for DSM Media, appreciate each and every one of you, especially you down there in the comments, and have a great rest of your weekend.
Peace, everybody. Happy Friday.
We're just not. All right. We're just not going to end that stream. StreamYard, still here with you guys. Don't worry.